Hey, good afternoon to you. Hope you're doing well on this Thursday. Yes, it is Thursday. Yep. All right. This is David Richard Allen with Balancing the Triad, Body, Mind, and Spirit. So, a topic I want to cover today, and I've mentioned this more than once, but yet I cover a lot of mindset here because this is basically where it's so important, and this is where everything centralizes. If you heard me before, I believe we're a spiritual being in a physical body, and the mind connects the two together. So, a lot about the mind, which basically makes the difference of whether you're going to do anything else. And I mentioned, I think it was yesterday, that I'm taking a couple courses, and it's just interesting to me about how everything just kind of blends in together. I am taking, they both started March 1st. One was, it's Magnificent Manifesting with Carl Harvey, and then The Bridge to HBR with Martha Krejci. And I've also mentioned before, I'm currently reading Jim Kwik's Limitless. And what I just finished reading today and what past, I only read a little bit a day at lunchtime, but how everything blends together and actually has to do with mindset and what I talked about before. And kind of dealing with I did a video. I had to go check before I hopped on there. I did it several days back. It might have been last week if you heard of that. It's about your self-talk. Are you aware of your self-talk? Because it was you're listening. So this goes to what are the loops that run your head. Now, loops is the terminology that Martha used, but yet it all ties together. Some of this can go back from childhood. And what I'm actually referring to here is the negative voice we have in our head, this negative stories we tell ourselves that sometimes go back to childhood. And this goes back to neuroplasticity with the brain. And I'll explain it in very simple terms the best I can. Matter of fact, I'll use the story that Martha told, or at least paraphrase it a little bit. And the idea is if you're like a little kid, you can make these Play-Doh pancakes or something. You go to somebody and say in your household and say, okay, here you go. And they accept another person says, no, thank you. Well, as a child, in the outside, as an adult, we can see, okay, it's no big deal. They just don't want anything. But as a child, they can say, okay, maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I did something wrong. That's just how they interpreted it. And then maybe sometime later, they offer it again. Can I help you out with that? Someone says, yes. Someone says, no, I don't need, that's okay. Don't help out. And the child makes the interpretation that, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm not supposed to help anybody out. And then maybe later on, it's like, okay, should I offer to help? Because last time I helped, I wasn't that good enough. I didn't do it. Because this is the story they're creating themselves. Right or wrong, that's the story they created. We've all done something like this. So maybe the child's a little oral, says, okay, let me help out. They say, no, okay, I'm not good enough. I don't need to help out. And it could be interpreted as worthlessness, even though there's no logical explanation for it. And logic has nothing to do with this, but yet that's where it comes from. So what it goes through as an adult, we may have this loop running in our head that refers to being worthless, not being worthy, and we don't do very much. We don't try to step out. We don't try to do anything because in our mind, we get shut down. So we got those loops as when they're running in our head that are basically like trenches. They get deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, all of us have this in some way, shape, or form. This is where we get the negative voices come in and tell us if you're trying to do something new, if you try to do something that's uncomfortable, who are you to do this? You can't do this. It's not possible. And sometimes even those voices come from outside, from people around us, even those that love us most. Now, most of the time they love us most. Most of the time they're usually not trying to do it on purpose to harm us, but yet the effect is that. And all it does is intensify those loops you have in your head. So this is where the negative voices come in, limiting beliefs, all the above. But to counteract those, the same thing that Carl talked about, same thing that Jim Kwik wrote about, is we got to counteract them with positive voices. One of it is you got to be aware that those negative voices are there. It's one of the first things is you can't change what you don't know. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. So you got to be aware of what's going on. You got to catch yourself to those voices, and then you got to get something else positive. You have to overpower them, or as Martha even talks about, is to not shout. I think she said her terminology was shout over them. You got to shut those voices out, and you got to start creating a new picture in your head. And one of the things is, you may or may not have heard this, is your subconscious mind, which controls basically everything. Your conscious mind is like the tip of the iceberg above the water that you're aware of. The subconscious mind is what's below the water, and that's basically what controls everything. I've mentioned this before. With your subconscious mind, everything you see, everything you hear, everything you watch, everything you read, everything you think is into the subconscious mind, and that's what's running the show. And your subconscious mind does not know the difference between what is real or what is imagined. So this goes back to sometimes with the stories we tell ourselves, which I think is the quote I shared today for inspiration from Mike Gillette, is that we have stories we tell ourselves. And if you actually go back, and sometimes it's the stories, a lot of times are just the interpretation we have of the event, because events do not have meanings until we give them one. But what happens is, regardless, we get the stories in there. A lot of times they can be, if they're negative, they get over and over again. So you have to start out and switch into a positive one. You got to start thinking about what is the type of life you want to have, what is the event you'd rather be doing, what is it you're looking for. And Carl talks about, and Martha talked about the exact same thing, is you need to write it down. Well, I shouldn't say you should need to. It's best to be able to write it down. And then make sure you go through and read that statement. So for example, if you want to lose some weight, if you want to work on balance, you're trying to lose weight. And say for in 2 or 3 months, I will have lost 20 pounds in the next 2 months. So right now, I'm saying this at the beginning of March. So at the end of May, I've lost 20 pounds. I've lost 20 pounds. I'm exercising regularly. You get a little story about what it is you want to look like, and you write it down, whether it's on your phone there, but you spend regularly throughout the day saying that to yourself. Believe in that to yourself. Even though your voice is going to creep into say, no, you can't do that. You've not done it before. You've never exercised before. You're not going to be able to do this. Catch it. Go back to saying that and start living in that. Imagination is the key to everything here. Is start to imagine yourself out. If you're outside walking, imagine yourself as that fitter person. Imagine yourself being healthy. Imagine yourself what you're going to look like. Feel what it feels like. See what it's going to see like. What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? Use as much sense of your senses as possible. And read that statement and just spend, whether it's just 15, 20 seconds to read the statement and visualize everything. Try to bring everything in and read it. Try doing that at least 5 times a day. So Martha was mentioned about 5 times a day. And even Carl talks about that science backing up. He's got quotes from even from the CIA. The more you do this, the more you create positive loops in your head, and they will overpower those negative ones. But it's got to be consistency. I've mentioned consistency is one. I did a video on that before. But yeah, I want to share that up because this is what I was reading about, taking notes on this morning about how all 3 of these things just overlap with each other. You got to take those limiting beliefs, that negative voice, be aware of it, and then overpower it with some positive thoughts. And it needs to be consistent. This is one I will say, it needs to be consistent. You do it once, you do it twice, that's not going to happen. Because some of those loops you had in your head, they're decades old. So it's going to take regular work to keep looping them over to integrate new positive ones. All right. Hopefully that made sense for you. And there's a bunch of science to back it up. If you're interested, I can recommend books that was recommended to me about going through if you want to learn the science of some of this. But some people might call this dealing with, say, the law of attraction, partly what it is, but it is dealing with neuroplasticity when it comes to the science and the brain. There's science evidence to back it up. And positive, I just was reading about Jim Quick about study, because when you're more positive, you actually see more opportunities that are around you. You're able to come up with better solutions to whatever you're dealing with. So yes, make sure you get those positive affirmations, if you want to call them that, but find out what it is you want. Write it down, have it carry a little card, do it on your phone, a reminder to have you go through and say it, preferably out loud. But use all your emotions, feel the experience, and then let that keep doing that over and over, day after day. And then eventually you will go into that new person, that new habit, whatever it is. And once you get that, then you get yourself another one. There's always another level where we can keep going. All right, again, so hopefully that made sense to you and you utilize it. And let me know if you've ever done something like that before, or if you caught yourself and know you need to make some change or something like that. All right, hopefully that, okay, 3rd time, hopefully that made sense, or is it 4th time right now? I'm not for sure what it is. But have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time. Take care. Bouncing to you.